Yeah.
Hannah from Birmingham Kirkland. Sorry, I was just checking because there's your namesake, Andrew, is one of the weights guys, and he's just moved to SES. So
SES
I was
engineer.
talking with him last week. Yeah. Do you know him at all?
Don't know. Don't think crossed the paths yet.
Okay.
But I'll just say that apologies anyway, George, because I have a meeting at workshop at 15:15, and I'll try and jump back on if it finishes in time. Okay.
Okay. In fact,
shall we get moving?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want. I'm not going to. I've got a summary of the last meeting, which I'm not going to go through the whole blooming thing because we've only got an hour. But just as a reminder, we started the last meeting looking at handover information. We agreed it was provided often, but not used properly. It's not updated. We need to define operational data to define the requirements that are needed. There's a major disconnect between design and construction and FM. There are data quality, integrity, but also ownership issues, ownership of the data itself. We're going to look at business case and cultural barriers. So, George, we kind of have a direction, but George, you've got quite an interesting take, I think, which has emerged since we met a couple of weeks ago.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there's two things really. David Simpson from AA told us that under the new framework, the new DFE framework, there is a mention of defining the asset information, or a need to define the asset information. And it's not covered, I understand, David, in the recent issue. And what we discussed at this last meeting was an opportunity for us as a group to either contribute to or indeed make that that definition of what asset information actually is needed by the schools. Have I got that right, David?
So it notes that it's not really geared around the needs of operations, and it just defines all the requirements as being around COBE and IFC, without saying how that is to be used or what else is required.
Yeah. So that, I think that's an open opportunity for us to contribute to that, and then be able to drive the agenda, as it were, because we've got people who are experienced people of working on the ground, like Mick Harrison, who's on the call at the moment, and also Matt Cunliffe, and there's, I'm sure, other people as well that we've got who have an engineering and operational experience. So that's one of the things that I think that we should be concentrating on. Does everybody agree with that? Does that make sense? Yeah, Brian's nodding. Okay, so we can take a pitch at that. The other thing that's happened in this last couple of weeks is really coming out of the work that a couple of the other work streams have been doing. In particular, the one that Tim's been helping coordinate on AI and data engineering. So the reason I'm mentioning that is that we've been taking, this is the education working group. So it's not just schools. It's universities as well. And we had we've got several universities on board with supporting what we're trying to do. And Tim was given an example from a handover information for a university project. It was basically a reconfiguration project, and Tim ran through the data engineering tools that we've been discussing in that work stream, and we identified that there's quite a lot of issues, and that caused us to think, well, if this is common, that the O&M information is incomplete, and we're relying from a golden thread perspective on some of that information, which is going to be in the O&Ms because it's not been modeled, then surely that becomes a potential issue. And I had a conversation on Thursday with one of the technical directors at Arcadis, and he said, well, surely those are defects, because the information is should be there, and if it's not there, then in particular with the golden thread, it's a defect. And I'd not thought of it that way before. And he then said that's probably what we should be looking at. Now, if we look, Andy Simpson, before you go, you're obviously delivering the BIM information, the information side of things, but who's doing the O&Ms within Burma and Kirkland?
We sub them out. We used to do them ourselves, but now we sub it out. So
are the documents in the O&Ms? I'm not picking on you, Andy, because I think this is very, very common. I'm sure other people from tier ones on the projects are going to be in the same situation. If you've got documents in the O&M, let's say, for example, door schedules, and you've got door schedules and drawings. I mean, that's one of the things that Tim's been picking up through the audits. We're finding that the schedules don't match what's in the in the COBE. Now, the question is, for me, is if the deliverable is supposed to be a coordinated set of information, and not everything is put into the models, which we know it isn't, then, and some of it is being captured, in fact, a lot of the key information is being captured in documents. How are we auditing that, and how can we actually say that information has actually been provided or not? Brian, you had your hand up.
Yes, is my mic on?
Yep.
Yep, excellent. It was on that point of whether it is a defect and contractually, and I suppose I was going to kind of open a conversation about that, because is it a defect? Because it depends on what contract it's defined under and what the scope of defects are, and or is it another type of non-contractual performance or non-compliance with the contract? Because I suppose the problem with defect is in terms of contractually, it's about the works not being carried out in accordance with the design, isn't it? Or if it's a design issue that's caused the defect. So it's what we're classing the information not being in accordance with the contract as, because obviously when we're talking about handover information or operational information, it may have a longer need or than well, it's got potentially some of it's got the need for the whole of the lifetime of the building, whereas if we look at defects, there's a time limit on those, 6 or 12 years, or if it's written differently depending on the contract. So I suppose my point is there a different mechanism relating to purposes through the information protocol or something along those lines. How would that deal with it? That's what I'm talking about, and whether someone like May Winfield needs to be talked to about it.
Good point.
Because,
good point. I mean, my thought is that if it's in the EIR, that you're supposed to be providing information in accordance with that requirement, then that I think that's a breach. I must just take this call. Could somebody else take over?
Yeah, no problem. George, you're on mute. Oh, he knows he's on mute. Okay, so anybody got any comments on what Broom was saying? Basically about defining a defect. How do we, for it to be a contractual, for you to be contractually liable within the contract, then the defect, what a defect is, must surely be defined. I think that makes sense. Tim, do you want to come in first?
Yeah, I mean, as I remember in days when I was doing this, is that if you got something wrong on the drawing, you had to fix it. But I can see that there's a big dilemma here, because everybody's very used to doing inspections and saying, "Oh, that's not right. That's a defect. Fix it." And there's a protocol for it. There's a flow for it, and you raise an order and it goes through. The problem with information is the way that it's checked, and also I think as Andy said, is that this is being outsourced. It's been contracted out. Somebody else has done this O&M, but the liability for it or its accuracy still lies within the delivery team. And the sorts of errors that we're getting, I'm looking at it from a point of view of, well, when would this error actually get found out? And it would only get found out when there was a problem and somebody started routing through and went, hang on, this store schedule is for the wrong building. I mean, this is what sort of things that we're getting. We're getting documents that are being included that, well, one was a building control document, the approval, and it was for a different building. And you just and it, if you're looking at this, it only takes one thing to be wrong for you suddenly to doubt everything. But also, what's the mechanism for it? Everybody's really got away with it because of the amount of time it takes to test it, to check it.
Well, is there an argument
now,
then that this stuff should be checked? Is there an argument this stuff should be checked rather than wait until something happens?
Well, that's the problem, is the cost of the checking. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Oh, George, you're back. Good.
Sorry. Thank you.
No, that's good.
Okay. In my opinion, we're talking about defects, etc. One of the things is qualify and define what is to be handed over. Then that's the defect. That's the requirement. Quality control. What is a quality control mechanism? Who's responsible? And make sure that it's applied. There's no issue. It got to be there. Who pays for the quality control? That's a question, Tim, that I would raise. Is everybody says, well, we haven't got time to do that. But if it's being done, in my opinion, we can have multiple handovers, because we've defined what a handover means, what's defined, what's going to be handed in, and a set of measures to say it is compliant or not. I think we just make things too difficult for ourselves. If you haven't got the ticket to ride on the bus, get off. Finished. My opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, so my thought is that if it's explicitly stated in the EIR and the AIRs, then that is a requirement. That's a contractual requirement, isn't it, Brian? Would you say?
Yes, it is. But whether it's a defect, that's the point I'm raising, because I suppose what I'm saying is defects are normally something that's an expression of the design, and historically that would be through the physical design and whether it works correctly. But obviously there's the liability for that ends after 12 years, unless it's written differently in a contract. Whereas the information and discovering whether that's incorrect is going to potentially be required for a longer time.
I see what
I
you're
think
saying.
and also I think it's a procurement issue, because you've got two aspects. You could say, yes, the one delivery team or a number of delivery teams are responsible for providing it, but also the client is should be checking that it's acceptable. So there's two sides. Ideally, you've got two sides of QC. One on the client side,
Yeah,
accepting it. One on the delivery side, providing it. So I think there's, for me, it's a contractual issue, because depending on the procurement route or how clients want to set things up, they should ideally have their own specialist checking and accepting the information that comes in, hopefully in an automated way, because you can say all these things that we want information of the EARs for the O&Ms, etc. But how do you know you're getting what you're paying for unless you pay someone to check it? It's the same with any you have representatives on both sides, don't you? As a client, you want you pay people to check the design, check for defects, that the contractor's doing the right thing. It's the same for other information, isn't it?
yeah. I was having a conversation on Friday with one of the senior guys at Barclay Group, and he was saying that the way I was having this conversation with him, and he was saying that Barclays are way above the standard for quality checking. Whatever measure. He said that it's expensive. We do have to. We put a lot of effort and a lot of resource into it. So I think that just confirms what you're saying, Brian.
Mm.
The reason I'm raising it is that so much of this, we're putting huge effort into the BIM process, and I think that it's quite possible that we're producing some good quality information. But if half of the information's in the O&Ms and nobody's relating those back to what's in the rest of the information model, then that seems a big gap. David?
I just sort of like to look at these from two slightly different viewpoints. First of all, with sort of my information manager hat on for a moment, I think it's quite important to say the difference between different ways of checking, what you're checking for, how you do it, and the outcome of that. That there's obviously, if you've got structured information in any form, you can do automated checks on it. However, all you can really do on that is to validate that information. Is the information there? Is it in the correct format? What you can't do necessarily is verify that information. Is that information actually the correct information? So if you're looking for a dimension and people are giving colours, clearly it's the wrong format. But what you can't do is, if somebody has given you a dimension, confirm it is the correct dimension or fire rating, whatever it might be. It's very easy to run automated checks. We get it done on our Kobe and all sorts of things. To make sure that we are populating all the correct data fields and they are of the right type. And we do that to our sub-consultants and other people on the design team to make sure that everyone's providing the right information. It's up to the author of that information to confirm that the information itself is correct. The other thing, and this more comes from putting my architect hat on for a moment, very often we're asked to produce as-built drawings or as-built schedules. And under a design and build contract, we have great reluctance to do that because we don't have the involvement on site that we would do under other forms of contract. So we can't hand on heart say these drawings are exactly what has been built. A lot of that comes down to our insurance. A lot of the time, we're often not allowed to say that's what they are. So very often we will say they are last issue for construction or something else, and immediately then you're beginning to question the validity of that information that's being handed over. So some of our university clients have written into the contract that there will be measures on site such as post-completion or laser scanning or scanning throughout the process, against which models and drawings are verified and against which the delivery teams have to update their information so that to an agreed level of tolerance, what's handed over as models or drawings does represent what has been built. That can be very, very onerous, and very often we are getting things pushed back to us as consultants by the contractors saying, that's a fault, you need to update your information. And our default response is to bat it straight back, saying, no, that's a fault on site because it hasn't been built in accordance with the information. And there's always a bit of a wrangle as to which way happens. And ultimately, we have to update. But there's always then a compensation measure, as because the update isn't because of any fault on our part. It's because something has happened and it hasn't been built a lot of the time in accordance. Maybe something else happened, or construction tolerances, or whatever it might be. So that because of that, I think it is very difficult to say whose defect is it. Is it a defect, or is it that the information that's been handed over isn't technically correct from one way or another? So I think it's a very interesting and complicated discussion.
But there's a difference. Take the dimension example, that you could still be changing or updating the drawings to match what's on site, for example, but it still could be within tolerance under the contract. But then there's also the tolerance that the model, the 3D aspects of the model is built to, because that's specified as well. So if the two things don't match, you've potentially got an internal conflict between standard methods and procedures, or the information standards, and the contract as well. So you could have pieces of information that are incorrect and a dimension, and then the drawing is updated to be outside those two things, because that's what's happened on site. So it's I'm just wondering, is that a different thing we should be looking at? Because whether or not it's right is one thing, whether the client has accepted it for what it is another.
That's right. So particularly on
whether they sorry David, I think the challenge is, Brian, is that all too often the client isn't really given the opportunity or the understanding of what the implications of those things are.
Yeah, but I suppose to be harsh, that's the client's issue, is it? If not, well, no, I mean, no. I know it ends up being a problem for everyone. I know, but you can't force the client to do what they need to do. The only way that's going to happen is being prosecuted for things going wrong, isn't it? For some clients.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that, for example, we've had lots of examples of this where the client's very heavily pressured into signing it off, because if they don't sign it off, then they don't get practical completion. So they because the information hasn't been provided in a way that's easily checked or consumed, then they stand no chance. We've had it recently where we got 16,000 documents, and the contractors pressing the FM team to sign them off within 2 days, which was madness.
Which is why it needs to be automated, doesn't it?
Correct. Yeah. Well, I think this. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I agree with you. The other thing I would say on the digital bit, or on the defects bit, is that my understanding is of the golden thread, it's a digital deliverable. Yeah. So therefore, if it's a digital deliverable, that is a deliverable. It's as the digital building, arguably, is as important as the physical building. I know that sounds mad, but if you look at this through the prism of PFI, for example, which I do a lot of work in, if you haven't documented something, it hasn't been done. Yeah, it is considered not to have been done, and the penalties are that it's not been done unless you've got a digital record of the fact that, or unless you've got a record of the fact that it's been done. And I think possibly we ought to be a bit harder with this, because either we believe in the golden thread and the process, or it's not important. And if it's not important, the majority of things that the information managers that and this team are doing, what's the point if there's no recourse? Sorry,
Yeah,
Pierre.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
David, I support you. One of the things that we need actually to be able to do is automate. That's where we're going to get sanity. So things like scanning of the condition of the building as the development takes place, as the construction takes place, in fact, should be one of the requirements that we make, is that we can monitor how it's developing. And principally, Mr. Client, you're the person who benefits from that, because we can show you the development, we can show you the gap analysis, we can do all those things. And we need to use the technology as far as possible to be able to verify, validate the actual data that we've got. We've defined it at the beginning, not in LOD and LOI, but in fact what the parameter type is, etc. It's easy to do all of those things, but it's then to go and make sure that the processes that the construction is being done by, the handovers, etc., are all very clearly defined. And that way will make our jobs much better, and the client far more circumspect about just making changes all over the place, because they'll suddenly see that there's actually a cost implication. And that now starts making it real, in my opinion. Sorry, thank you.
Great. Sean.
Yes, just the Golden Thread Initiative under the Building Safety Act requires traceable, reliable, and accessible building information across the life cycle. But if you look at, we have a background coming from aerospace, automotive industries. When you design them, the whole life cycle from design, engineering, simulation, before you making anything physical, everything's a single source of truth, not BIM model, but the MBSE, model-based system engineering, and the DFMA, design for manufacturing assembly. So every single information traceable, all the interfaces between different manufacturers, global collaboration, engineering, manufacturing collaborations, everything works with a zero tolerance. I think we should borrow the brilliance from the industries. Obviously, we're not building Airbuses or jet fighters or nuclear submarines. However, there's so many things we can learn from that, because that currently you're talking the golden thread. The thread is a mess. Is it gold plated or is it fake? So we should rethink about. To me, the BIM doesn't solve any problem. It's a stepping stone towards the next level. But yeah, that's just my opinion.
So, Chum, picking up on what Brian was saying earlier, how enforced are any digital defects in the industries you're talking about?
Yes, I can answer that. We obviously, as you know, we run architectural practice. We're the software developer.
Yeah.
And also we act as principal contractor or digital principal contractor. For example, we recently completed the Browns Hotel in Mayfair. And that is 10 million pounds per room per night, that kind of thing. Every day you're running late, there's 10,000 pounds penalty per day. So all bespoke carpentry, there's no room for error. So what we did, a 3D scan every single room and do the design for manufacturing, assembly, modeling in the 3D environment, and that data goes to the fabricator, manufacturer directly with very small. And then obviously we need to agree with the carpenters with the tolerances in the 3D. What's your tolerance? And we shake hand on that and just go ahead and fabricate. Now we're testing another hotel as a chain hotel. We're going to do beyond the just a carpentry, but also MEP side. Hopefully we can share that information with you. The single source of truth. And using.
John, do you have any examples of where the digital, something that was digital that should have been provided proved to be wrong, and therefore it's considered to be a defect. I just wondered if you'd come across that. Doesn't
No.
matter if you haven't. No,
No, I
that's okay.
haven't. No. Yeah.
Gordon.
Couple of things tying that together. Just what you mentioned there, aerospace, those kind of industries, they're designing before they build. Going back to David's point that he made earlier on, they're building before they've actually done the design, or they're looking at the design, and then when they get the design drawings, they're actually not building it to the design. So they don't become as fitted. So they can't. The discipline is in so many instances, in my opinion, I don't think the discipline's there in our industry as we construct, because they just kind of put it together. And basically, the substitution of documentation is because they don't significantly see it as being that relevant that the information is going to be consumed by the client side for it to be beneficial to the client side. So you then go back to Pierre's issue of, we need to demonstrate the benefits to the client of digitization in the process of stages of completion, nearing practical completion, nearing switch on, nearing commissioning, and that the commissioning is actually handing over to the client, an asset that is operational as intended, I think, as I put in the comments, because that's not a defect. If it's operating as intended, I don't think there's a defect. If it's not operating as intended, you've got a defect. And the earlier you notice that, before the contractor disappears, preferably, before he breaks down his site cabins and starts running for the hills, because you try and get him back after it, you've got little chance, because the operational team has been lost. And that whole knowledge that we've had of the guys that are building it is lost as soon as they get disseminated and sent to other sites. And then you get different guys coming forward to kind of, and I'm in an MEP world, not in a, forgive the reference, a static door, size of aperture, ironmongery, fixed component. And I've been criticised for taking the door analogy too far. A hinge is a working hinge and a door is a working a lock. But I mean, when you're talking about MEP and electrical items, I know about the difficulties of switching them on and contractors blowing them up and then calling us back as a manufacturer saying, oh, your unit's not working. Well, no wonder you didn't actually set it up correctly. It's not been commissioned correctly. It's not working correctly. Or digital data.
So, Gordon, on the MEP side of things, a couple of things spring to mind. One is it important that the things are commissioned properly?
Absolutely imperative.
And if
the system.
Yeah. And if the commissioning records are missing, therefore you don't know how it was commissioned and set up.
Well, it probably wasn't, going back to your point earlier on. If the commission records aren't there, you've not actually paid somebody to do a task. Because if you paid somebody to do a task, generally it would be documented. If they've not done the task but charged you for it, it's called fraud.
No.
If they've not done the task and charged you for it.
Let's say it's been done, right? Let's say it's been done, but somebody's lost them, in handover. They've just not been provided.
Yeah. But a digital exercise would validate that process. Digital performance monitoring harmonizes that process. HN tasks.
So you wouldn't need the records. Are you saying you wouldn't need the records?
No, I think if a commissioning exercise, I mean, it depends what you describe as commissioning. Commissioning is a function of setting, in my MEP world, commissioning is setting valves to a performance task. Right, well, what's the flow rate? So you've measured performance. Somebody's then certifying that the performance through that valve is meeting that and the design's being met. But the fluid hydraulics from it, from my point of view, is it performing? Is it corroding? Have you got corrosion in the system? You need to know about that as early as you possibly can, because if you don't, you're unaware of what damage is getting done internally to that system. And until you see failure, and go back to Tune's point, Tune's industries have been designed, certified, tested before they're even building it. They're actually testing to failure.
Exactly. So what I guess I'm saying is it important that this information is provided, or isn't it? you know, and if
Well,
it isn't,
I'm biased because I'm selling machines that generate that information. But in my opinion, it's imperative.
okay,
And from what I'm seeing, there is an awful lot of kickback from contractors that are getting that specified in, because they're really nervous about that. They're really nervous at validation at practical completion. And I get
exactly.
it, because practical completion is like it's like a picture. It's like a picture of a party. I've used the analogy before. It's like a picture of a party that looks great, looks fun, but the party was hopeless. The music was rubbish, the entertainment was hopeless, and the conversation was absolutely appalling, because we were all talking about BIM, or we were all talking about MEP industry, or whatever it was. But unless you're in that organisation yourself. But
Anna, you've been very patient. Could you just hold for another second, right? Because Mick, you told me a couple of weeks ago about the need for the information about which distribution board was supporting which electrical assets and things like that. If that information wasn't provided, as an operations person, would you say that is a defect?
It's lack of information. It's not classed as a defect, because obviously if it's been installed right and stuff like that. But then if you look at it from I'm trying to think how it was discussed before. It's what level of information do you gather? So are people wanting this information when you're handing it over, or they're just wanting saying that distribution board's been fitted, which is great. But from an engineer's maintenance side of things, it's the ENCR checks you get done every year. Tell me what fuseway that supplies. Okay. From that information,
I appreciate that as asset teams, you're used to getting incomplete information, and you find a way of maintaining the building. I'm not, but the fact is, the whole point about the golden thread is that you should be given the right information about how that asset should be performing. And for me, if that information isn't provided, if it was in the contract that it should have been provided, that's whether it's actually called a defect legally is something that possibly we need to check with, as Brian said, with May Winfield, or maybe some of the other people that we've got in the team. But Anna.
Well, I just wanted to agree with Gordon, who made a point that in any of the industries that create huge amounts of same thing, like a automotive or air industry, the control comes from the fact that you are first designing, then producing, and you're producing a repetitive, predictable product. Yeah, in that case, the element of unpredictability that happens on site is in a way slightly removed, not completely removed, but removed. Yeah. What we deal with buildings, especially in this context, we're talking about schools. Most clients will be building only one school. Even DFE can't quite work out how to formalize things. But when you get to actual clients, that school board, that school a panel that you'll be working with, they're only doing one project ever in their life. They don't know what they will need, and they don't sometimes even know who is going to maintain the facility. Therefore, a kind of minimum baseline that we as professionals can agree would be incredibly useful. And then beyond that, I don't think we need to try and predict everything, and I don't think we should hope that everything would be automated. Only things that are completely predictable will be automated. Everything else will have to be nurtured by someone who knows what they're doing. Yeah, and that role, I don't know where that role is. Maybe sits with a contractor, maybe sits with the lead designer, maybe with a principal designer. I mean, that we can agree that. Yeah, but an element of nurturing everyone at that end moment really needs to exist, because it's impossible to predict everything. Literally impossible. Try to do it for your shed and you'll fail. So for a school it's really difficult.
Okay,
thanks.
That's brilliant, thank you. So what I'm feeling is that there's support for the idea of us as a group actually trying to define what good looks like at the end, so that any auditing can be done either in an automated way or a semi-automated way. And that's the sort of methodology that we're going to be talking about on Thursday, if anybody's interested in coming along to that, because that's very much what I think we should be doing. The reason I was raising the defective the defect liability was that, as I say, one of the technical directors of Arcadis, who's responsible for quality, that's what he said. So I think we should be at least exploring that a little bit, because I then had a conversation with an insurance specialist, and he also said that he thought that was a valid thing to be discussed. Now, what I'm seeing, there's a disconnect at the moment between what we're doing in the BIM process and what's being assembled for the O&M. I think they're disconnected, and I think we need to connect them back in again. Chum.
Yeah, just a quick one, because I've spent time, been doing this for many years, a few decades, and what I've learned is the core of disaster, the root of disaster is not the process. It's actually upstream where the clients are. The procurement is the biggest problem. For example, if we architect will design the curtain wall for a tower block, I specify SUCO. The 100% stage 4 detail design is based on SUCO. Once you tender it, the contractor decides to use UNDAR. So the interface, the connections, the slat conditions, and these also affect the suspended ceiling, raised floor, everything's changed. So this package we just produced is obsolete. But that's how you get the defects, because once you start the installation, you realize, oh, UNDAR is actually cheaper than SUCO, but if you look at all the program, the longer impact, all the other design changes, you're actually not saving money. So there's a problem, the procurement, design and build contract under the nomination. You can't nominate it. That's the problem. We should be more controlled. So what's the point if the client asks the architect design and specify a building, say UNDAR SUCO windows, and the QI is pressed for SUCO, and they turn around and build something else? What's the point of that? You see, obviously the contract coming in, it will specify something cheaper, downgrade. Oh, it meets all the performance, by the way. And back to the MEP Gordon just mentioned as well. The MEP engineer designs something. Again, once you subcontract it, they build something else. So all your golden threads is irrelevant. All the specifications, the original design intent is not longer there anymore. That's how you get this fragmented information, in a big mess.
I think you've got quite a lot of support for what you've said there, but we've also got the reality of the way people are looking for, buildings to be built at the cheapest possible price, and all that. It's that sort of tension that I think that we're trying to help address, isn't it?
I do see a wee bit, isn't it? You specify one thing and you build something else. Like Airbus, we always use Rolls-Royce engines, and we want to put Boeing now. And that changes everything. It's not just fixing the engine on the craft air wings,
But fundamentally agree with you, and that's really the point about the change control process. What they're trying to do under the Building Safety Act is, at least on the safety critical items, then that should be there. And that's another point. I'm just going back to what Brian was saying earlier. I think that what we should be doing, in terms of our information requirements, not just for education, but also for other elements, is I think if we focus on the safety critical items, then at least from that point of view, that's one area that we can get right. So, for example, I'd like Tim to, in a moment, just could you show what we did on Friday for the universities, Tim? Could you line up to just go through that and unpick that one?
Sorry, George, can I just interrupt you?
Of course.
Right, this is a task and finish, it's a work stream. So are you saying that the task is to define what good looks like in terms of information for fire critical assets?
But no, that the task is to define what good looks like in terms of handover information for an education establishment. I think that's our principle. That's what we started this work stream on.
Yes,
a little
agree with
while
that.
ago.
Right, okay, so that being the case, firstly, isn't a lot of that in our existing guidance for fire critical assets? And that's my first question. Isn't a lot of that actually already in existence?
We've got some guidance information, but it's not how it glues together. So we've got it for, it's a really good point, Richard. We've got it for individual fire critical assets.
Yeah.
And to some extent, we've got it for systems. But what we don't have is how is that communicated as part of the overall building?
But is it a start point, maybe, rather
yeah,
than
yeah, of
starting
course.
with a blank piece of
Absolutely.
paper? That's what I'm thinking.
We're definitely, absolutely, definitely not starting. We've got already a fantastically rich set of information that we've collected over the last 5 years. Absolutely, yeah. What I'm saying is that this task and finish work stream is that there's two things. Well, I guess there's three things that have come out of it since we started. The first is we always started from the perspective of actually understanding how we could take the great work that some of the construction teams are doing at the moment in terms of delivering new schools, but then transforming the information into a form that we get proper engagement from the schools themselves. So that's part of the reason that people like Waits and Wilmot Dixon and Bowman and Kirkland are joining this group. So that's one aspect. We then looked at that from a point of view of the other work stream that we've got going on, which is the Golden Thread task force, the Golden Thread tasks, which we've been doing with Mortar, because Mortar is being used already to specify what information is being or how the information should be formatted. I nearly caught myself out there because Mortar isn't telling you what information. It's simply a mechanism to compile the information and then review it and audit it. So those things feed nicely together. The thing that Mo said was missing from what he thinks is needed are the task information delivery plans, because that is explicitly what is being managed by the information managers. So therefore, that's the bit of work that Franco's been looking at, and we've been trying to.
So for this work stream, what is our next meeting? What are we doing? What's the methodology that we're going to use to do what you've just described?
Well, what I'd like to do is explore whether we could do the reverse engineering of the O&M documentation, because it's the O&M documentation that, from my conversations with people, that's what the schools are using. The schools.
And do we have that to reverse engineer? Have you got examples of that to reverse engineer?
Yeah. Well, we need some examples, schools examples of that. We've already, education. We've got one, which is the one Tim can show. But if we've got O&Ms, it may sound stupid all the time I've been doing this, but it didn't click with me that the information managers like Andy are separate from the people that are compiling the O&Ms. I knew that, but I didn't realize quite the implication.
Yeah.
Yeah. Andy, you had your hand up a moment ago.
No, I was just agreeing with you really more than else. I think I put it in the chat before I left the meeting that we use the Mortar process from some jobs to check what's in the MIDP to what's on the CDE.
Yeah. Tim, could you just...
I think the problem we've got though, George, is when you've got client CDs when they don't match up. That's the challenge we have.
Say that again, Andy. Sorry.
It's client CDEs when they were
Oh, yeah.
and using theirs, they're not using ours. That's where the problems occur, because I've got a problem at the minute with trying to match up in my DP with their glider system compared to our CDE that we use, and there's gaps. So again, it's just creating more risk.
Yeah. That's where taxonomy and all that sort of stuff, I imagine, comes in, is it?
Yeah, I'm trying to come to a resolution at the moment, and yeah, it's early days.
Okay, good. Tim, could you just show what we've only got sort of 8 minutes left, but
Okay, lightning fast.
Yeah.
Okay, so what UCL gave us is an example of a health and safety file that they had for a project. So this is an existing building, and they did some works, and they've got a format of how everything that should then be produced, and obviously it's all baked into one file. So that gives them a bit of it gives them some flexibility in the fact that so long as they've got enough memory on the machine, and they can open up, well, however big this, and this file is 1,560 pages, and it includes drawings and everything. So, and one of the interesting things that it had was also the fire safety, fire stopping report. So this is the fire stopping, those are the certificates, but this is typically a report that people would get, and it would have one pin per location. So quite difficult to see in context, and the whole point about this is that it's how do you unbake it. So be looking at creating a program that just starts to split it up and retain everything, so you just keep dividing it down and splitting it all out. And one of the reasons for doing that is if you look at, say, we've got drawings, it's typically, so that was just by selecting all the drawings and just saying output them. So you typically get that. Running it through AI would then give us to find out what each one of those drawings was. Because inside an O&M, you'd just get the title, the drawing number, the title, and then you wouldn't get anything else. So obviously using AI, what we can quickly do is just process it. So I should have run this spreadsheet up first, but it's just process it so that we get a consistent spreadsheet that gives us everything we need to know. And we could actually get it to also then copy and rename this as well in the same process. But it gives us the actual status of what the document is, or the drawing is, the scales, and when it was done. And that's another thing, is that when you get handover information, if they've included information that says it's an as-built drawing, for example, but the date is 2 years old, is it really trustworthy? Has somebody just done a tick box exercise, just gone, I've got to just make this as-built and reissue it and take it from there? So because we had on a project a few years ago, a fire strategy drawing, which just the plan of the building didn't match what was actually built. So it wasn't a fire strategy drawing, it was an intent for what the fire strategy was going to be, because the consultants who did it were then not kept on to finish it for completeness. So just using data engineering tools that we developed, some of them are automation and some of it is AI, as so shown. We can then pull things together. So we've got a spatial model. If I just switch the backdrop off, there's the spatial model. And then we can pull in any backdrops we like. We can start to see things in context, and going to the fire stopping report, instead of seeing one page per fire stopping report, we can now just click on them and we can see everything. And it also, from the fire stopping report, the automation just rips out the data so that you then got that as a record and you can just see it. So everything starts to become more contextualized. And that's the issue, is when George talks about space and asset, it's really context. Everything should be in context, and you should be able to see everything like that. Is that enough, George?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So my ask at the moment is that if you've got any projects where you've got O&Ms, if you'd be willing to let us look at those, then we can do a similar type of analysis that this, because as I say, from what I'm being told, that tends to be what the FMs or the asset teams are actually using.
Yeah, and I think in this case, where we know that all of their buildings are going to be completely structured the same, then we should be able to run the automation tool to automatically dissect the data back down to its constituent parts and then check them and pull out even more information about them, pull it together. When we did the O&M checker, which checked a whole series, a big batch of O&Ms and produced a report, obviously one of the questions was, how much could you trust it? But we had a team that had spent a couple of weeks and going through that and doing that exercise, so we've got something to compare with. So we've done that exercise. But one of the questions I was asking myself, well, what does good look like? So could I go through a whole section and say I can make an O&M that actually will pass this and will be actually verify against it? But obviously it's going down the rabbit hole, and it is a nest. And so how far do you want to go down? It's that thing of, did you supply me what you said supply me? So there's that. Sorry, George. And then there's, do these schedules actually tie together? And then right down to the last bit, which is, well, can I trust this data? Yes, it came from the manufacturer because it's their catalog entry or their technical specification from them. And then when you come to the system engineering, that is, I think Anna mentioned about, that's where the speciality comes in. That's where, does this system actually work? How do you do the black box where you switch everything off? What do you need to switch off to do this maintenance on it, etc.? That's where the network of the information. Now, so whether you build AI,
must stop you. Right, so because we're running out of time. Yeah, so what I'm interested in is seeing if we can. I believe as a collective, not just in this education group, but the other ones that we've got coming through. I want to be able to pull together people who are interested in this type of thing, yeah, and being able to look at how we can determine what is important and really importantly what isn't important, so that we as a collective, as a Golden Thread task force, can actually be a group, a respected group that can identify that and also start putting stuff right that isn't right. Because if we can do that, I think that it's going to make it a lot easier for people who are providing information to know what good looks like, and hopefully raise the bar to make sure that door schedules are properly defined, and for example tag numbers and Kobe data is done properly. Pierre, he's still there?
Yeah, George, just very quickly, I think, and Tim, it's about taking all these pieces of data in PDFs and different formats and getting them put into a proper SQL database where you can have the metadata applied and you suddenly start getting access to a whole bunch of things plugging into the platform that you're busy working with, and whatever platform, but we need to define those little boxes that go together to make up.
Absolutely. It sounds to me you're a volunteer on that, Pierre. But if you're interested in getting involved in that work, or at least being contributing to it in some way, I think probably put O&M review into the chat, and we'll include you in that. I mean, we will be talking about this week because I actually think this is really significant. I think it's relatively straightforward for us to do. It's not having to get into the remits of whether it's needed for the Building Safety Act or building regs or whatever, all of which we're also doing. but this is pretty straightforward. You've got what's in the employer's information requirements, what should be in an O&M, and has it been provided? Gordon.
Just finally, just to revert back to something you said earlier on, George, very quickly. We've got a big national contractor that's got a number of PFIs in the UK, and they've basically adopted a resource that we have that digitizes information on systems that is relatively innovative, but they've recognised that for so many years they've had no information. Everything that you said, George, earlier on, in the sense, in the absence of any data, it's assumed that they've not done it. But of course, they're nearing hand back, and they've got no data for years and years and years and years of operation of that system. So they can get some identification. Okay, they can't go back. There's no crystal ball. They can't go back, but they can at least look at what they've got at the moment and where it is. So it's identifying that good, bad, ugly, and trying to deal with the ugly, make it good, and deal with the bad and make it good as well, effectively, and take it on that process.
Just absolutely. Just to reinforce what Gordon's saying there is that on a PFI contract, I think a lot of you will know this already, but I think it's worth just emphasising. On a PFI contract, the way the contracts are set up is that if the information isn't updated for a room, and this could be just a power socket being moved on a wall, so you could say, does it matter? It's not the power socket being recorded, it's whether the room data sheet has been updated and whether the drawings have been updated, right? Now, if that work hasn't been updated in the health and safety file in the O&M and the records, that room is considered to be unavailable, right? Now, what does that mean? It actually means that there's a penalty on that room for every day that that information was wrong. And that can go back 5 years. And it can cost anything between £100 a day and £1,000, or even for an operating theatre, it's $5,000 a day. So if that information isn't up to date, the PFI, the FM companies can be they can get millions of pounds in penalties. So that's where the digital record becomes important.
George, just let me quickly, before everybody leaves, if you're interested in coming along on Thursday to the AI group, put AI in the chat. Anybody who wants to join O&M, put O&M review in the chat. If you're interested in joining the Golden Thread group, which I know Brian said he is, put Golden Thread in the chat. So AI, O&M review, and Golden Thread. Put those in the chat and we'll be inviting you to the next meeting. Sorry, George, I wanted to get that in before everybody left.
No, absolutely. And we've got 2 more meetings this week. One tomorrow on residential and another one on healthcare. Now, there's some of these things we're going to talk again about this, right? Not in anywhere near the detail, but you're helping me with your feedback, looking at how we can communicate this, because we're a team looking at things from different perspectives, aren't we? Is everybody? Do you feel as though we've made some progress today? You've given up an hour of your time. Thank you. Good. Okay.
That was a ringing endorsement, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was actually. Yeah. Oh dear. Okay. Well, we'll see if you come to the next one. We'll arrange another one for a couple of weeks' time.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Matt Cunliffe, could I have a quick word with you afterwards?
Yes, sure.
Thanks very much, Richard, George.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.